Are there actually mysterious pyramids in Bosnia? Is there a Sphinx in Pakistan predating the one in Egypt? Are the oldest pyramids in the world in Indonesia? These are ancient structures that could be evidence of advanced technology. In Bosnia, there's a site called Visoko, where some believe there are ancient pyramids hidden underneath layers and layers of dirt. Now, the Bosnian government, along with a lot of archaeologists, claim these are just natural formations, but a group of researchers, including a man named Dr. Samir Osmaganak, insist that they're man-made pyramids, possibly built over 12,000 years ago. If there really are pyramids here, they're also interestingly positioned. They align perfectly with the cardinal points, and the materials used seem unusual. The stones are said to be fitted very precisely, and that there's some sort of bizarre energy field around them. Some even claim these pyramids could be harnessing energy like a power plant. The biggest pyramid, known as the Pyramid of the Sun, has led some to wonder that the people who built it had access to advanced construction methods, possibly even technology that we don't know about today. Gunung Padang is a hill in Indonesia, but under that hill is a massive man-made structure that might be older than the Great Pyramids. There's been debate around the site for years. Some researchers think it's the remnants of an ancient pyramid complex. They've done carbon dating here, which has shown that it could be 20,000 years old, possibly even older. The core of the site is made up of huge, precisely cut stone blocks, and there's evidence that the structure was built in layers over time. The entire site seems to be built on top of a massive underground chamber, and if you ask some researchers, they'll tell you that it lines up with the positions of stars and planets. Basically, it looks like the ancient people who built it knew a lot about how the night sky worked and could track things like the stars and planets, maybe even using that knowledge for things like farming or rituals. For as mysterious as the site is, it doesn't get nearly as much attention as places like Stonehenge, for example, but it might have been home to a civilization way more advanced than we ever have imagined. In Baluchistan, a province in Pakistan, there's a rock formation that looks like this. Now, what's the first thing that comes to mind looking at this thing? Well, it looks eerily similar to the Sphinx in Egypt, doesn't it? The formation is carved, or rather formed, out of the side of a hill, and I say it could be formed because it's not entirely clear whether this thing was naturally formed or not. But it doesn't match the time frame we'd expect of any ancient civilization in the area. Some think it could be the remnants of a lost civilization, possibly dating back over 10,000 years, well before the Egyptians ever carved their version. The idea that there was an advanced civilization in this part of the world, not as famous as Egypt or Mesopotamia, is pretty mind-blowing, but also kind of frustrating because we don't have any solid proof. Some think this rock formation came from some unknown ancient civilization who had the tech to carve massive statues with crazy precision, and maybe even had the know-how to line them up with stars or solstices, kind of like the Egyptians did. Others think this is just a naturally formed rock that just happens to look like the Sphinx, but what do you all think? Karnak in Luxor, Egypt is one of the most impressive temple complexes ever built. It was dedicated to the Theban triad Amun, Mut, and Khonsu, and construction began around 4,000 years ago. The scale of this place is just insane. It spans over 200 acres, and inside it are massive stone pillars, each weighing several tons, and as you can tell, looking at these images, its design and construction were incredibly advanced. The walls are decorated with astronomical alignments and star maps too. The Egyptians probably had an even deeper understanding of the cosmos than we give them credit for. The precision of the architecture here is just amazing. The stones were cut with such exactness that they fit together without mortar, something that still baffles experts today. And the pillars, they're not just massive, they're carved with such detail that it's hard to believe ancient people had the tools to do something like this. Aksum in Ethiopia was the center of a powerful ancient empire. The most famous thing here are the giant obelisks, massive stone columns, some over 70 feet tall and weighing hundreds of tons. So how were these giant stones moved around? There were no cranes, no heavy machinery, all they had were basic tools. So how'd they manage it? Precision in the carvings and the way the stones fit together with no mortar is incredible. It's almost like they had some kind of secret technology for shaping and transporting these blocks, but we have no idea what that could have been. The obelisks are even aligned perfectly with cardinal points, like they had a deep understanding of geometry and the stars. Some people think this might point to lost tech or knowledge they had that we've just lost track of over time. How did they do this with what should have been limited resources? it's still a mystery. Baalbek in Lebanon, this place is straight up wild. The Temple of Jupiter here has some of the biggest stone blocks that you will ever see. Some of them weigh over 800 tons. That's way heavier than anything we see at the Great Pyramid of Giza. And here's the thing, archaeologists say they moved these massive blocks with simple tools and manpower. The blocks are cut so precisely and fit together so tightly it's hard to believe they were just stacked with ropes and pulleys. Plus, there are these detailed carvings and perfectly laid foundations that have survived earthquakes and centuries of time. How did they do this? Some think they could have had tools or techniques that we, again, just have lost today. Maybe even stuff like advanced machinery or some lost form of energy. Geoglyphs are these massive, ancient, and mysterious earthworks that we see when we look down from above with a bird's eye view. You can find geoglyphs all over the world, but one of the craziest discoveries came in 2007 when a guy named Dmitry Day in Kazakhstan started using Google Earth to see if there were any in his country. And after perusing maps for a while, he spotted something. There were over 260 giant shapes scattered across the landscape. The biggest one, an intricate square, is even bigger than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. At first, people thought that this was all a hoax, but after NASA got satellite images and confirmed these findings, it was clear there was something there. From the ground, it doesn't make much sense, but once you're above, shapes start to reveal themselves. Crosses, squares, lines, rings, and mounds. The whole thing changes how we view ancient nomads. These structures show that whoever built them had some serious organization and manpower, which is a huge surprise since nomads were typically seen as, well, not exactly big on staying in one place long enough to do heavy construction like this. As for how old they are and exactly what they were made for, nobody's sure. But they might have been created by the Mahadzar culture from 7,000 to 5,000 BCE. The Ica stones are a collection of carved volcanic rocks found in Peru. They come in all sizes, from small ones that will fit just in the palm of your hand to massive boulders over a foot wide. Now, these ones aren't famous for being hundreds of tons or anything like that. The evidence of possible advanced technology here comes from what's carved into the stones. And sure, you have your typical scenes of animals and humans wearing ceremonial headdresses, but some stones show much stranger stuff, images that appear to show advanced medical procedures, like heart and brain surgeries, C-sections, organ transplants. There are also carvings of people looking up at the stars through what look to be telescopes, and there are dinosaurs. Lots and lots of dinosaurs, except these stones would have been created long after they were extinct. It's all just very strange. So how did these people possibly have such advanced knowledge, way beyond what was thought possible for ancient civilizations? We don't know. And we don't know anything about the people who created these things either. There's no other evidence of their society. There are no ruins or other artifacts, we just have these stones. Darencuyu is an ancient underground city in Turkey. It's over 2,000 years old. It's massive, with multiple levels and hundreds of rooms, and it's pretty sophisticated for something built such a long time ago. The whole place seems like it was designed with real engineering know-how, things like an advanced ventilation system that keeps fresh air flowing, even deep underground. Then there are things like giant stone doors that could be rolled into place, shutting off entire sections of the city for protection. It's clear a lot of thought went into its design. The underground city is about 280 feet deep and could house up to 20,000 people, along with their animals and food supplies. It's everything you'd need to live down there: wine and oil presses, stables, storage rooms, chapels. One of the rooms is thought to have been a religious school, with nearby spaces used for studying. Over the centuries, the city was used to shelter people during invasions, but eventually it was forgotten about, and it just stayed hidden until 1963, when a homeowner renovating his place found it all by accident. He'd been chasing a chicken that ran into a hole in his basement when he found this whole network of underground tunnels. By 1969, parts of Darencuyu were open to the public, and now you can explore about half of this underground city. Alright, now we couldn't do a list about ancient structures and possible advanced technology without mentioning the pyramids of Giza. The Great Pyramid, in particular, is just insane, made up of 2.3 million blocks, some that weigh 80 tons. There have been a lot of theories, debates, and conspiracies over the years about how the ancient Egyptians managed to cut, move, and stack these massive stones so precisely without anything like cranes or other modern tools. It's even crazier based on the fact that these pyramids are still standing just as they did all those years ago. The mainstream explanation is usually that they used copper tools and like ramps and pulleys. We've never had a definitive explanation, and don't even get me started on the pyramid's alignment. It's aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the Earth, and even has some pretty crazy astronomical alignments. It's obvious they had a pretty advanced understanding of the stars and the Earth's movements way ahead of their time. With all that said, I've been your host, James. I will catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.